Are you ready for some real football?
Welcome back to Warpaint TV, December 15th, 2011. Once again, I'm Shane Williams here with Chiefs Insider Nick Athan. Nick, just 4 days after the University of Kansas introduces Charlie Weis as their head coach, Todd Haley gets the axe as the Kansas City Chiefs head coach. And begs the question, is the Midwest big enough for Charlie Weis and Todd Haley? Wow. Well, kidding aside, you had a chance to be at the Arrowhead Stadium for the press conference with Clark Hunt and Scott Pioli. You got to ask some questions to both of them as well. What was the mood inside the locker room and the press conference Monday when you went up there?
Well, in the locker room, all the players were conveniently gone for the day, so we really didn't get an opportunity to talk to the players, and a couple of them came out Monday night. Derek Johnson, Jackie Battle basically said, you know, Todd was a good guy. They respected him, but those are the only two that came out and said anything, so that pretty much tells you what. But, you know, the demeanor was strange. You know, I mean, it's clearly that these two had a tough decision to make. Clearly they were unhappy about the situation. I thought Scott was pretty humble, probably the most humble we've seen him since he's come to Kansas City. I mean, he starts off with Todd Haley, which didn't work. He started off by drafting Tyson Jackson, which hasn't worked yet. He made the trade for Matt Castle, which, you know, hasn't really worked yet as much as he had hoped it would. You give him all those guys big contracts. And now Clark Hunt's going to have to basically foot the bill to bring in a power coach. You're going to have to spend some money in free agency. You're going to have to give Scott Pioli. He's going to have to, upgrade his ability to evaluate talent and get free agents in here. So the mood it was tense. I mean, I could feel it. I was sitting in the first row, and you could feel the tension between the two. And some of the questions that were asked were kind of like, you know, listen, I mean, Todd Haley's made close to $2.5 to $3 million a year, so he's still getting paid, whether it's around the holidays or not. I thought that wasn't – I don't think that's appropriate. If your football team is losing and things aren't working, you make a change. It's never a good time to fire anybody. So I think it was the right move for the organization. I think if they did not beat the Colts that day, I think he would have been gone a lot sooner. I think Romeo Crennel would have probably turned the thing around to the point where the Chiefs could probably win the division. But just too many mistakes by Todd Haley. It was a bad hire. He's not a good football coach as far as a head coach goes. Great wide receivers coach, and that's probably at the level that he's going to coach next.
You know, a question that you had a chance to ask Scott Pioli at the press conference was, you asked him, was it important to compete with Jacksonville looking for a head coach? Well, after the press conference, you and I and the world knows the Miami Dolphins fired their head coach. A good friend of yours, Carl Peterson, is now the vice president of the Miami Dolphins. You got to know him. You got to know Carl Peterson more than a lot of other reporters in Kansas City. Now that you know Carl Peterson is the driving force behind finding a new coach in Miami, what does Scott Pioli have to compete with? Not only in Jacksonville, but you know what Carl Peterson's about. What does Scott Pioli have to compete with looking for a head coach, Nick?
What Scott has to do is I think he's just got to compete with himself. I mean, let's face it. I mean, the rumor is that, well, he's egotistical and that he's hard to work with. You know, it isn't necessarily so. He worked with Bill Belichick and they won 3 Super Bowls. And you know what? Whether it's because of Belichick he gets the credit or whether he did it on his own, the bottom line is they worked together. You know, but Belichick could coach up. Belichick could evaluate talent. Belichick was all about today, tomorrow, and the future. That's what Scott Pioli wants, but if you don't have the right head coach, so I don't think a Jeff Fisher or even a Bill Cowher or a John Gruden is really going to care all that much. It isn't about power. These guys want to win Super Bowls. That's it. That's all they care about. So what he has to compete with is, are the Chiefs a better opportunity than the Miami Dolphins or eventually probably the Dallas Cowboys or maybe the Minnesota Vikings, the Tampa Bay Bucks, the St. Louis Rams, you know, Jacksonville Jaguars, all these teams that are looking for head coaches? What's the best path to get to Super Bowl? If I'm a Jeff Fisher, which is the guy I'm championing to be the next head coach of the Chiefs, you know, you've got a good quarterback situation here. You can probably draft a young quarterback in round 3, and you'll have 3 or 4 options. You've got a young defense that's got some playmakers. You've got an offense that has some playmakers, guys who have been injured who are going to come back. They were injured early enough that they should be ready to go by training camp. So you put all these factors in. You've got an owner like Clark Hunt that, you know, I don't think people understand him as well as some other people in the media do who have more access to him, but he cares. He's carrying on a huge legacy of his father. I mean, no one can fill those shoes, including Clark. And that's no offense to Clark. It's just not possible because Lamar was such an extraordinary, legendary human being. But you know what? He still has to do it. He still has to get Super Bowls to Kansas City. And anybody who thinks that Clark Hunt is cheap, isn't going to pay Cowher $7 million or Fisher $5 million or whatever it is wrong, dead wrong, dead wrong, dead wrong, dead wrong. I'm talking about the report of 610 Sports from Nick Wright. He will spend the money. He has no choice. Season ticket sales are at an all-time low. You have got to spend the money to make money in the NFL. You've got to have a solid general manager, which they have. You've got to have a terrific head coach, and you've got to have a good quarterback. Those are the only three combinations that win Super Bowls. Clark Hunt knows it. He spent the money with Pioli. He spent the money with Castle. Now he's going to spend the money with a head coach. Once they do all that, I think they're going to be okay. This team has talent. Of all the job openings, this is probably, in my opinion, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a Chiefs fan, is probably the most realistic for a coach to come in year one and get to the playoffs than any of those other teams.
We'll be right back after a brief message.
Don't miss another edition of Warpaint Illustrated the magazine. To get your subscription today, call 888-979-0979. That's 888-979-0979, or check out warpaintillustrated.com.
All right, let's talk Chiefs and Packers. This Sunday, the undefeated Green Bay Packers come to town, on a mission to keep their undefeated season going. Do you get the feeling that if Romeo Crennel wins this game, that the fan base is going to be supporting of him more than a Jeff Fisher or Bill Cowher? What do you think?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's just one game. I mean, if I'm the Packers, this is not a game I want to play. You've got an upheaval in the coaching staff. You got the players who are all fired up to have Romeo in charge. There's going to be a passion. There's going to be a different attitude. It's almost going to be like the first regular season game for some of these guys. That's the attitude. So if I'm the Packers and I want to keep this an undefeated season, I mean, the Miami Dolphins are all the 71 teams going, hey, man, Kansas City, come on, because they don't think anybody. I saw Bob Greasy when he was here in Miami, and he's still got that arrogance around him. He doesn't care. He doesn't want anybody to be 17-0. So, I think this is a tough game for the Packers. I really do. I think the Chiefs are going to be fired up. I think it's going to be a much closer game. And you know what? I love Romeo. I've said this before. He's one of the best, if not the best, defensive mind in professional football. He is a guy that is charismatic. He was great with the media. He sits there and he says, hey, these guys are going to play Kyle Orton or Ricky Stanzi. Palco's third string. Palco's done in Kansas City. And Haley would have waited till Friday or Saturday or game time decision. And he basically said, listen, do you think the Packers really care about who the Kansas City Chiefs starting quarterback is? No, they don't care. So what's the point? So it was refreshing. I mean, it had everybody in the media buzzing, and as one reporter said, it's the first time in 3 years that we haven't gone to sleep at a press conference with a head coach. So it's true. Listen, I don't know if this is going to make much of a difference. I think the Chiefs are going to be okay with Romeo if he's the head coach. I'm fine with it. It's not the home run hire you want, but if they can't get Cowher, Gruden, or Fisher, or even Brian Billick, I think it would be a good choice for the Chiefs. If they can't get one of those four guys, then if it's Romeo, then Romeo will do a good job. He'll have a lot more to work with in Kansas City than he did in Cleveland, because I've said this before, Randy Lerner is probably the worst owner in professional football, the way he has mishandled that organization. Now, he brought Mike Holmgren in, which was a good decision finally, but it took a lot of turmoil to get to that point. There's not that much turmoil here, kind of going back to the coaching thing, but for Romeo Crennel, the passion will be there, the fire will be there. I think it's going to be a close game. I don't think the Chiefs are going to win it, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's 7 or 10 points or less.
Romeo Crennel says he doesn't want a quarterback controversy, but let's say Kyle Orton plays well the next 3 games. Does he have one this offseason?
I don't think there is a quarterback controvery. I don't know if Matt Castle is going to be back in 2012. They have an opportunity to get him out in March. I think it's a $5 or $6 million buyout or something like that. The roster bonus isn't that significant. They've got plenty of cap space. I think Kyle Orton will play the next 2 games. I think Ricky Stanzi will maybe play the Denver game, or maybe Kyle will play some of it and Ricky will play some. I think Ricky will definitely see some action over the next 3 games. But, if I'm the Chiefs, if they can trade Matt Castle, I trade Matt Castle. If they go in the first round, depending on where they fall, if they're in that 5 to maybe 6 to 11 range, they might get one of the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks available or be in a position to make a trade. So I think it really is all going to depend on how many games they win the rest of the way. So I don't think I know Kyle Orton wants to stay here. I think Kyle Orton would be a good choice. I think he's got a better deep ball. Though Matt Castle's a good quarterback. I just think for Matt, he's been through so much in Kansas City. I think maybe for his sake, he needs to change the scenery. And I love him to death. I think if Weiss was here, the Chiefs would be winning this division, no question. But I think he's gotten a raw deal. I don't know if he can overcome it, because the fan base is kind of against him. And I really don't know why, because nothing that happened this year was his fault. This is all Todd Haley's doing in mess. No offensive coordinator, basically. 3 guys trying to call plays. Dysfunctional all the way around. And Castle's unjustly getting crucified. So as someone who cares about the guy and likes him, maybe a fresh start is the best thing for Matt Castle for 2012.
And real quickly, What's your gut feel like? Jeff Fisher, John Gruden, Bill Cowher, Romeo Crennel, Kirk Ferentz. Talk to me.
Okay, Kirk Ferentz, I don't see it. I just don't think Scott. I don't think Clark Hunt's going to sign off on a college coach. Bill Cowher, if he goes anywhere, it's going to be maybe the New York Giants, but I don't think he's going to coach. That's just me. Billick, I think it'd be a great choice as a fallback. Crennel, I'm fine with. I want Jeff Fisher. I've been clamoring for him for 3 months. That's my guy. I'm not going to stay off the I'm going to stay on the bandwagon until Jeff Fisher personally tells me he's not coming, because I think he'd be the right choice. He'll be a guy. Excuse me. He'll stay here 5 to 10 years, and that's what the Chiefs want. They want another long-term fit like a Hank Stram or a Marty Schottenheimer. They want someone who can stay here for the long haul. To me, Jeff Fisher's the best candidate. Romeo Crennel would be number 2.
You heard it here first from Chiefs Insider Nick Athan. Once again, I'm Shane Williams with Warpaint TV. Until this Sunday following the Chiefs and Green Bay Packers game, join us next time at Warpaint Illustrated TV and Warpaint Illustrated Facebook and WarpaintIllustrated.com. Until next time, happy holidays.